Hello everyone, welcome back to the shed. It's finally here. As you can tell by what I have behind the model, I'm a big fan of this. It's the Bulleid Leader by KR Models. Sound fitted in prototype grey. So let's get it out of the box. I happened to brush up on this very recently by reading through this very nice book that I could recommend to you. And this lovely print that I purchased, blimey, about 5 years ago now. Speaking of, I pre-ordered this nearly 4 years ago and now it's finally here. I have already taken this out of the box, so a little bit of the surprise has already been and gone. And some issues already rectified, which I will state in just a moment. So, first thing I want to point out, just before we get the model out of this ice cube, I want you to take a look at this foam packaging. You can see it's quite rough. You know, it doesn't even meet up to the ends over here. I don't know if that's quality control or if this was done by KR themselves in a bit of a rush to get them out after Christmas. It seems a little odd. The box itself came in a cardboard box through the post. It did not have any dings or anything to it. This was by Royal Mail, 24 hour. So it arrived nice and quick from when they dispatched it. I didn't actually receive a notification email saying it's on the way. I just got an email yesterday from Royal Mail saying your parcel from, it wasn't even KR Models, it was some logistics group, I think. It will be turning up tomorrow, which is today, obviously. I digress. The model itself, it's got a nice weight to it. This weighs basically the same as a diesel locomotive. Of course, it does look a bit like a diesel locomotive. The colour itself is a sort of silver, although in this lighting it does look a bit more grey, which is nice. Down in the house this definitely looked silver, which I think is a point of contention because you look at the images. There's only one colour image ever taken of the Bulleid Leader, and that was at Eastleigh when it was receiving a central large cycling lion, British Railways early emblem, and the central number, and it was painted in grey. After it went back to Brighton, it had the cycling line taken off and the central number taken off, numbers at each end and this lining applied, and this is how it ran for most of the time during its trials. In fact, all of the time during its trials, it was wearing this colour scheme. So, before we get on to the good points, let's point out the bad ones. Let's get them out of the way. The coal load, while it is a revised design, it does look better than the original one that was on display on this stand for ages and ages. You can see this odd sort of, you can see the body shell under some of these corners, which kind of ruins the illusion. I think there's two good fixes to this, and one of them I'm going to do. The one I would recommend to everyone is because this is secured with double-sided sticky tape to the body, and I will give them their props, this is very strong double-sided sticky tape. I would recommend actually taking this off, getting a pot of Tamiya flat black and painting in underneath so that that silver at the edges doesn't show as much. In my case, I'm planning to make my own custom coal load, so I'm going to measure this area, take a very thin piece of styrene, maybe prime it, paint it black in Tamiya flat black, and then apply real coal to that. I want to make a video on that. Once I've sort of planned it out, and of course I've recorded it, I will upload it and show my results. And I'll retain this, I won't throw it away. I'll put it in the box. Other issues which were up this end. It's a shame I've got writing in the background because it wants to autofocus on it. It's a bit better. This lamp bracket, well, it's a disc bracket really, down here, central bottom was bent, still slightly is, and this whistle was bent. However, this is plastic, I believe, and it bent back into place nice and easily. And now the biggest issue I'm going to point out. This wheel right here, same end, cover the writing Autofocus, please. Please. There we go. So this wheel on this axle here at this end, it was loose on the axle. However, a quick press against the axle with a pair of tweezers and it's perfectly secure in place. So it may be a transit issue, it may be a quality control issue. That needs to be weighed up. Either way, it's something for you to watch out for on your own models. Steps look fine, they're all intact. Underneath is nicely detailed, of course. I noticed someone, I can't remember if it was on Facebook or a forum, stated these BFB wheels are, you know, the sort of cutouts are, you can see straight through them. And they didn't know if that was prototypically accurate, and they thought it wasn't. It is. There is a photograph in this book over here of when the Bulleid Leader, on the number 1 end, I believe it was, the central crank axle split, it cracked. And there is a photograph of the wheel off of its axle on its side in Eastleigh Works, and you can see that these are fully cut through. You can see straight through them, I believe. So I believe that's prototypically accurate off of photographic material of the real thing. The livery itself, the lining, very nice, very crisp. All the riveting detail is absolutely lovely. Yes, this was a riveted body, even though the boiler was completely welded. That's something to note again. Try and get this book, fantastic read. The front end is nice and imposing. Focus, there we go. It's nice and imposing. And it looks, I don't want to say it looks smarter, but it looks better than the photographs do of this locomotive. So one thing I'm going to try and do, there is a cradle up here. I'm going to do this off camera and then tell you how much of a farce this may or may not be. I'm going to fit the tension lock couplings. So here's a jump cut. Okay, so in hindsight, a jump cut wasn't actually needed. I think you just need to be quite careful in doing this. I think they... no, yeah, they're fine. Okay, I was about to say they don't sit central. Yes, they do. A pair of pliers to squeeze the actual tension lock before putting it in the socket is what you need to do. Don't try and force it in there. Just be careful. This is a very expensive model, and it's you know, one of those oddities. There you go. There's the socket right there, and the tension lock just sitting in it. Lovely stuff. So let's pop this down on the track, and then do a little bit of a clean-up of what's here. Now let's think. It was, I'm trying to think which end led out of Brighton. Bunker end first led out of Brighton. You'd think I'd remember this after reading this book just a few days ago. There we go. She's on the track. So let's get the cradle out of the way. Have a quick look at what's in the detail packs. We have 2 3-link couplings. I don't know why they're not screw links, but here we are. I believe if I pull out the first actual image in this book, it'll probably show a screw link. If I can find a good picture of the front. Oop. As the book tries to close itself, you can see right there, that's a screw link. So the supplied couplings in the detail pack are wrong. I don't know why that couldn't have done a bit more research, considering this has been 4 years since I pre-ordered this. Again, just wanted to put that out there. And a pack full of Southern Railway indicator discs. None of these written on in any way, and from what I've heard, these actually do slip over the lamp irons on the front, which is a very cool feature. It means you don't need to mess about with blue tack, black tack, or anything like. You can simply put it on and take it off at your leisure. Those who may or may not know, when this was running, it didn't have any tail lights, so if it was light engine, it did have a red tail lamp on the rear left hand side. And when performing a number of test runs with the dynamometer car, when it was based out of Eastleigh a bit later on, it had a single disc at the middle, well, yeah, I'd say sort of middle position, left hand side, a single white disc with SPL, short for special, written on it. Just before I put the box away, we have a nice little pamphlet here. This diagram here is actually on the inside of the Leader book, as is this nice photograph of when it's in Brighton Works in its gloss coated black, and then the following day they stripped it off for some reason and it went into grey. The only known colour photograph of the locomotive at Eastleigh, red buffer beams, getting the early crest applied with its central number. Colourised photograph and a photograph of it at Eastleigh again. So that will go back in the box. I'm going to keep the DCC sound function list out, obviously, because I need to know what the chip does on each function. So I'm not going to do an up close. I think I'd be able to do an up close sort of when I do the conclusion of the video. So what I want to do is give this a test run around the layout over point work and such alike. I can't test it over two directions on the three-way because there's stuff in the platforms, but I can still run it over one way on that. And of course we've got the double slip and curve point straight out of the yard. So we want DCC, because this is of course sound. We want Loco 3 because it is default, and we want to unisolate road 3. That's interesting. It has a pair of working red tail lamps. Okay, there we go. So I wonder if this is going to be default on when it's moving in terms of sound. Because that sound activated when I turned the lights on. That wasn't me pressing the sound function. Okay, so forwards is denoted at the chimney end. Backwards will be denoted at the bunker end. Slow speed running is fine, maybe a little jittery, but this does need running in, of course. So up to speed 10, let's take it up to about 20. Runs nice and smooth, a little bit of motor noise but not too noticeable, definitely won't be when the DCC sound's on. Yeah, very nice. Right, so I'm sorry to disappoint, but you know, as I was just running this in, I want to point out a few things here. Some very thick white lubricant has been used on the entire gear worm and gear system, and these universal joints, and honestly they were starved for lube, so I've put some gear lube in there and it is running a bit smoother. Now you may have noticed an odd mysterious ticking noise. Can you see the problem? That's not shine off of the light, that's white paint on the flywheel which is scraping against the chassis every time it goes round. I'm going to be scraping that off. And honestly I'm tempted to open the bottom of the bogies and see how much of that disgusting, very thick white lubricant they've used in there as well. So yeah, let's resume when I'm actually running this around the layout and I can tell you if it worked or not. So some things of note have been found. I'll talk about these a bit later during the conclusion. But it seems to handle the point work perfectly fine. And I'll show you that to you now with an express pair. Very nice. And I suppose almost a credit to Bulleid's engineering, it doesn't look out of place running around the layout. It sort of looks, I wouldn't say good because it's a very ugly duckling, but yeah, it looks the part. Very nice. So, I didn't show it on camera, but I did run the leader over the three-way point and it handled it perfectly fine. Plus, it ran into the platforms perfectly fine, nothing scraping along the platform edges, so clearances are perfectly fine with that as well. Just before we move on to doing the DCC sounds, I want to say that I did scrape that white paint off the flywheel and that scrapey noise did go away. There's still a little bit of motor noise, and I did say just now I was going to do it in the conclusion, but I want to note that running characteristics on DCC are jerky. It likes to lunge between speed steps 10 and 60. Meanwhile, on DCC, it does not do that. So that may be a question that I fire off to KR Models themselves and see if there's any jiggering I can do with the CVs in terms of DCC. So let's get the sheet of functions, let's get some sound. Okay, and also have some lights. And let's have the first whistle. Okay, and whistle 2. Okay, that's fair enough, that is a Bulleid chime. But looking from the front of the cab and how big that whistle is, I would have thought it would sound more like the Q1's whistle, which is very shrill. It didn't have a Bulleid chime. It doesn't have a Bulleid chime, the preserved one certainly doesn't. So yeah, I don't see anything wrong with it being a Bulleid chime, but okay. Buffer clash coupling does not work when loco is moving. Okay, so no, that's cab lighting. So function 4 is the cab light. Okay, so that's wrong. Brake application on 5. That does actually work, by the way. 6 is the emergency brake apparently. Function 7 is injector. It certainly sounds like an injector. I'm going to turn it off. Oh, I did turn it off. There we go. Automatic uncoupling. I don't know what that means. It doesn't specify. Oh, that sounded like a screw link to me. Oh. It helps if you look at the model when you press the function. Okay. So it pushes back slightly, like Bachmann's 31 does, but it doesn't have the special tension locks. So, okay, so you could have an uncoupling ramp at the end of your platform that blocks or something, and you could push back a little. Okay, I can see it. Curved squeal, that's dependent on the loco moving. Guard whistle on function 10. Okay. Buffer clash only works when loco's moving. Shoveling coal on function 12. Yeah, sounds suitably muffled. Of course, the poor fireman stuck halfway down the loco. Well, a third of the way down the loco anyway. Let's turn it off. Water filler. I did turn it on. Oh, there we go. Okay, safety valve on 14. Yeah. Just a footnote, I think that function will probably get used quite a lot. This loco steamed really well. The reason it didn't work very well is because of the sleeve valves used on the cylinders, which meant that half the steam being generated was just lost straight out the chimney. Cylinder drain cocks only works at low speed, that's fair enough. Heavy load mode, okay. Shunting mode, detonators only work when moving. Cab lighting's on 19 apparently, but we already know that's on 4. That is the sound of a screw link coupling to me. Yeah. So, okay, so the safety valve also works automatically as well. So that's very interesting. That's 19 and 4 on the listings swapped round. That's odd. Okay. Yeah. Train mode turns the red tail lights off. I'm going to put that on right now, which is function 20. And it does work, which is very good, because as far as I know, this thing didn't actually have red tail lights. It, every time it was running on its own, it had a tail lamp on its lower left disc bracket, or lamp bracket, whatever. Parking mode turns on all red lights when parked. No, I don't think I'm ever going to use that. AWS horn. I just want to point out this loco was around before AWS was widespread. Of course, this was running before the Harrow and Wilson crash disaster. So, okay, it applies quite well to the BR side of things, those fictional liveries. but I don't think that function is really needed. Coach door slams, alternate and latching. So that's function 23. Yeah, there's just some good coach door slams. And then 24 is wheel tapper, which in my opinion gives this away as a wheel tapper sound file. Yep, that is a wheel tapper noise. Yeah, wheel tappers like to put that sound function on all of their DCC chips, I believe. So that does give this away as a wheel tappers thing. That's not a bad thing, but you can now know, obviously, that this is not KR Models in-house sounds or so, I suppose. I don't know if they've modified the actual chuffing sound file in any way. I haven't heard this go around chuffing around a layout just yet. Maybe safety valve. I'll wait until this is over and then I'll talk again. There we go. Okay, so I tried to pick a sort of prototypical load of 3 coaches. Why 3 coaches? This is the load it was running with when it was being tested out of Brighton. When it was being tested at Eastleigh, it was with heavier loads, although most of the time it was with a dynamometer car. So yes, if you're modelling it as it were, running tests out of Brighton, 3 coaches will do. I believe there was sort of a fixed set it had at its time at Brighton, or it could have been just any old stock, I can't really remember. I do remember it mentioning that the stock when it was used at Eastleigh was just whatever was on hand. So in this case I've picked 3 malachite liveried birdcage coaches, and I think it suits it quite well. So let's apply some power and get this loco going around the layouts, and we can hear her in action. mucked that up a little. Anyway, that is KO Models Bulleid Leader. I was fully readied to pan this model, considering the running characteristics, but I'm not going to. I'm going to run through the bad points first of all. The lubrication used is absolutely abysmal. It's too thick for its intended purpose, and I had to add quite a bit of my own in order to get this to run properly, or at least a bit smoother. The strip of white paint on the flywheel was thick enough that it was scraping against the metal chassis. By scraping that off, that odd noise when it was running is now gone. Bent whistle, bent lamp bracket, not the biggest deal breakers in the world. No other detailing was an issue. Wheel off of the axle just goes to prove some terrible quality control that needs to be rectified. Giving it a very forceful push again got it back onto the axle as it came off again when I was lubricating the model. If it does come off again, I'm going to use super glue. And I think the final sort of bad point is oh no, sorry, there were two. The coal load doesn't look too good. I'm going to make my own, and I recommend you do the same if you get this model. I do intend to make a video on that though as well. And on DCC, the two swapped around functions versus what's on the list. Functions 4 and 19 being swapped around for some reason. I don't know why. Other bad point as well, poor running characteristics on DCC. On DC this runs perfectly smoothly. For some reason on DCC between speed steps 10 and 60 this thing likes to lurch. I don't know why. Now let's move on to good points. The detailing itself that is there is very nice. The rivets specifically really add quite a bit to the front end and its profile. The lining in terms of, or lack thereof, of a paint job are very nicely applied, as well as the numbers on the not quite cab side at both ends. The detailing on the bogies is also very nice. The BFB wheels appear to be accurate as far as I can tell. They are not quite the same as Q1 wheels, even though they are the same diameter at 5 foot 1 inch. The design with the southern discs that actually fit over the lamp bracket is a really good idea. The sound is absolutely spectacular. It really brings this model to life. Props to KR as well on accessibility into getting into the model. 4 clips that hold on the body and 3 screws that hold down the PCB. Really good stuff. It's really nice to see that being a thing. And also a chunky, nice big capacitor, which can really mitigate any issues on people's layouts, like dirty track, frogs here and there, things that can interrupt the supply. Even though there are pickups on every single wheel, that's just further mitigating any issues with that. Let's talk price now. £290 for this sound fitted example. I think that could be a good price to people who are interested in prototypes, oddballs, Southern Railway, or just Oliver Bulleid and his machines. I don't think it's a good price to Joe Public or someone who's on the fence about buying this, especially with all the problems as well. If you aren't a seasoned person in like model railways, you're going to have a hard time probably getting the best out of this model. I imagine if anyone saw a wheel off of an axle, they'd immediately send it back to the retailer on or the manufacturer. So I can not in really good conscience recommend or say don't buy this model. I think their quality, KR Models quality control needs to be improved upon. But once it all comes together, this is a really nice model. And you know, this has been quite a long wait of 4 years. We got there in the end, and here it is on my layout. Again, I was fully ready to pound this model. In terms of future runs, I can see that KR could probably do another run of this, and definitely maybe some other running numbers. There were 5 of these locos planned. 002 was nearly finished, 003 was in construction, 004 was just being put together, and 005 was just a pile of parts. So there is remit in order to do the other locos, of course 001 being the only version, the only loco out of the 5, sorry, that was finished and actually ran. So yeah, if you have any questions about this model or the layout, please do leave a comment. I don't really know what the next pre-order will be that will turn up. I imagine it might be something like Accurascales 31 in EWS, which would probably be around March time, I believe. I think it's still slated for Q1, late Q1. So until the next time we are in the shed, goodbye.